Coming in at number 5 we have Dr. Jack Kevorkian Death Van, also known as the Deathmobile. Dr. Jack Kevorkian's van was a place many people spent their last moments alive. The 1968 Volkswagen van was where Dr. Kevorkian carried out as many as 130 assisted suicides in the 90s, and has become a piece of history. However, at the time the pathologist was met with controversy and public criticism for his taboo work on physician-assisted suicide with terminally ill patients. He spent 8 years in prison for second-degree murder because of this, but is often viewed as a pioneer in the medical field and as an activist. His impact was so great that HBO released a drama called You Don't Know Jack, in which Al Pacino won an Emmy and a Golden Globe for his portrayal of the controversial doctor. Over the year, the death van has seen many different owners. Zak purchased this van for $32,500 from American Jewelry and Loan. When the Detroit pawn shop first bought the vehicle, it was actually featured on an episode of a TV show. Apparently, Long Island medium Teresa Caputo also passed by the van in their warehouse and said she felt something there. Visitors of Zak's Haunted Museum can peek inside the Dr. Jack Kevorkian's death van and see the exact spot where many people died. Coming in at number 4 we have Ed Gein's cauldron. This is certainly one of the more gruesome relics on display at Zack Bagans' Haunted Museum, and it's believed to have belonged to the butcher Plainfield Ed Gein. He's known for not only committing 2 murders but mutilating corpses and fashioning items from human skin. Some of this morbid creation include masks made from real human faces, a human skin lampshade, and a female skin suit. Although his kill count doesn't technically classify him as a serial killer, he still served as inspiration for several fictional serial killers like Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. This cauldron is said to have been a place for Ed Gein to boil body parts in, but its authenticity is largely unknown. It was auctioned off in 2015 by a man named Dan McIntyre. He claimed to have inherited it from his grandmother, who bought it in 1958 at Gein's estate sale following his arrest. That's bleak as The highest bidder was Zak, purchasing the little pot for $2,800. At the time, Dan said he was happy to be rid of it, as it was the source of strange phenomena. I mean, I wouldn't want that in my home. Now, Ed Gein's cauldron calls Zak's Haunted Museum home, where it is said to radiate negative energy. In at 3, Torquay Museum. Now, I just had to include this one on our list, not only because it's creepy as but also because it's in my neck of the woods, Devon, England. Torquay Museum was founded in 1844 and holds a dense collection of artifacts from across the globe. Now, there is no firm evidence or folktales reported on the museum, but there have been 2 unexplainable occurrences over the last 10 years that even paranormal investigators can't seem to wrap their heads around. To begin, on the 19th of July 2015, an article was published on the Daily Mail website seemingly showing a woman in old-fashioned clothing emerging from the floors of the museum. Take a look. Now, looking at it, you may just think it's a hazy picture of a girl in front of a fire. However, this picture was taken during one of the ghost hunting evenings at the museum, and according to multiple sources, nobody was in the room. Manager of the museum, Carl Smith, said, "We saw something in the middle of the photo, and when we adjusted the contrast, we clearly saw the woman. It was a bit of a surprise and pretty creepy. From the angle of the photograph, it looks like she is submerged into the floor, almost like she is below floor level." Creepy stuff. However, this isn't the only unexplainable evidence to emerge out of the museum. A year later, CCTV footage captured this moment from the museum gift shop. Take a look. Now, papers flying off shelves isn't abnormal, but the rate and speed in which it happens certainly is. I'm calling Ghostly Farm Girl spirit for sure. What do you guys think though? In at 2, Smithsonian Institution Building. Opening its doors 10 years after our previous number is the Smithsonian Institution Building, and it is rumored to host many spirits within its museum, including founding donor James Smithson, whose remains have resided in the museum since 1904. Now, in 1973, Smithson was briefly disinterred after claims of his spirit wandering the halls of the museum at night began to surface. The coffin was opened and his skeleton was still in its rightful place, thank God. The reports still come in of his unsettled entity roaming the building. Smithson isn't the only spirit to supposedly be haunting the building either. Spencer Fullerton Baird is another sighting written about by the Washington Post. Baird was the museum's first ever curator, and he is also rumored to be walking around the halls with Mr. Smithson. Other sightings include explorer Emil Bessels, Secretary Joseph Henry, and paleontologist Fielding B. Meek, who died in one of the castle's towers with his cat. Have you been to the Smithsonian? If so, have you seen anything otherworldly roaming the halls? crying for help perhaps? Let us know. And finally, in at number 1, the Cleveland Museum of Art. Not only a world famous art museum, but the museum located in Cleveland may now be the most notable for housing the spirit of Claude Monet, the infamous French Impressionism painter. If you don't know, Monet had a distinctive look, a full salt and pepper beard, and would typically be pictured wearing bowler hats. So when reports started rolling in of staff spotting a man that resembled that description surveying the museum, people got interested. After a new installation arrived at the museum named Painting the Modern Garden, Monet to Matisse, a staff member snapped this shot of a man that looks frighteningly similar to Monet, overlooking the new installation. Now, many have accused the museum of setting the picture up themselves in order to draw on the public. However, with the museum's history of ghostly residents, it seems unlikely. Former museum director William Mathewson Milliken has known to be spotted from time to time wandering around the museum, as well as the subject of the painting Portrait of Jean-Gabriel de Thiel at the signing of the Treaty of Vienna by oil painter Jacques-André Joseph Aved. They've also been noted to be spotted observing their own likeness in the picture. There are far too many reports to go on, otherwise we'll be here all day, but I highly suggest you look into the ghostly accounts from the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Number 5 on this list is the British Museum. The British Museum has a super haunted item in it that is said to be somewhat responsible for the death of hundreds of individuals. The unlucky mummy. Museum Crush says not actually a mummy, but the mummy board or coffin lid of an unknown high status woman from the 21st or 22nd dynasty. The British Museum's unlucky mummy has earned quite the reputation for causing destruction through its ancient curse. The mysterious mummy was found at Thebes in the late 1800s, and tales of its curse start soon after that. It's said that of the 4 young Englishmen who bought it, 2 died in shooting incidents and 2 died in poverty. A string of illnesses, accidents, and deaths following this are said to be attributed to the mummy. One of the most astonishing rumors surrounding the mummy's curse is that it caused the sinking of the Titanic with the loss of more than 1,500 lives. One of the victims on the Titanic was journalist William Thomas Stead, who was one of the first to pen articles about the mummy's curse. Survivors from the disaster recall Stead telling stories of the ominous artifact over dinner, and as the mummy's sinister reputation grew, people even began to believe that its presence on board caused the disaster. Now I will say this, there was no actual record of the mummy being on the Titanic. I mean, think about it. If it was, then how could it be in the museum right now? It would be at the bottom of the ocean. So we know that it was never actually there, but that didn't stop it from cursing the boat all the same. It's believed that Stead carried this curse onto the ship, and that the telling of these stories are what ultimately cursed the ship to begin with. Almost as if bringing up the mummy multiple times in a row unleashed its power. For my sake, I really hope that this isn't the case though. Pretty sure I've talked about this mummy a few times before on this channel, and if this is like a Beetlejuice thing, like say it so many times and then it happens, then I could be in for some trouble. Number 4 on this list is the Royal Museum's Greenwich. So apparently the Queen's house in the museum actually has a cursed piece of architecture built into it. Museum Crush says, rather a large object, the tulip staircase of the Queen's House of Royal Museum's Greenwich lays claim to being the first geometric self-supporting spiral stair in Britain, and is rightly regarded as one of the great features of the former royal residence. But it is also the location of the Rev. R.W. Hardy's famous ghost photograph. The retired Canadian vicar and his wife visited the house in 1966, and like many people before and since happily snapped away at the elegant spiral of stairs. But it wasn't until they returned to British Columbia and developed their films that they noticed a scarily cloaked spectral figure climbing the stairs. Subsequent investigations into both stairs and photograph have thrown no further light on the unearthly mystery, although as recently as 2002 a member of staff reported seeing a ghostly figure cross a balcony of the stairway before disappearing in time-honored ghostly fashion through a wall. I guess you could argue the staircase isn't necessarily an item, but Who cares? The museum is still as haunted as ever, and maybe even more so. At least with other museums that have haunted or cursed items, the curse just pertains to that object, and usually if you don't touch the object or interact with it, you should be fine. Just walking around this place, and especially going up or down the stairs, carries a pretty heavy risk to it. Be very careful around the stairs at the Queen's house if you ever end up going.
Number 3. The Museum of Death. Well, that's a cheery name, isn't it? You have to imagine with a name like the Museum of Death, there's something suspicious going on. Nope, not particularly. It's owned by a very cheery couple who built it in 1995 in the city's first mortuary. Their intended mission is to make people happy to be alive, which actually is very terrifying and ominous in a sort of Jigsaw, cherish your life sort of way. It's intended as a commemoration of life, just with a heavy focus on the last stage of life. It serves as a grim look at death, although the owners insist they don't want to scare anyone, but they're not trying to sanitize death either. Instead, they choose to show the reality of it, all the grisly details and all. As such, the museum is a site of controversy for quite some time, as some people find the exhibits a bit extreme. Some people go so far as to say it's tasteless, with footage of autopsies being shown and a collection of all sorts of relics from some of the evilest of evil criminals, Jeffrey Dahmer to name one. The museum boasts an impressive collection of bones, skulls, coffins, ancient morticians' tools and execution equipment, and all manner of macabre curios guaranteed to leave you feeling uneasy. Now, it should be noted, the museum is absolutely not at all for those with a squeamish stomach, and really should be reserved for those with a real dark interest in the dead. Number 2. Ed and Lorraine's Occult Museum. Now, it's hard to talk about a list of cursed museums full of the devil's objects without mentioning the Warrens' legendary Museum of the Paranormal. It almost goes without saying. It's probably one of the most famous haunted collections on the globe. Ed and Lorraine were storied demonologists, and the chances are extremely good. If you've even seen 2 videos by us, you've probably heard about them a million times. But it's still one of the coolest museums of cursed objects on the planet and is packed to the gills. It would be just wrong to leave it out of this list. Although the pair have since passed a while ago, the museum is now upheld by their son-in-law, Tony Spera, who carries on the mantle for them. The museum sits in a large shed just outside the Warrens' former property. I guess it's best to keep the evil close to home. The museum houses all sorts of dark souvenirs from the Warrens' storied past and is a veritable who's who for Conjuring and Warren fans. You can get a chance to get up close and personal with the real Annabelle, snap a selfie with her if you dare, or take a look at the cursed shadow doll made of real human teeth and bird feathers, or perhaps a satanic idol retrieved from the woods that caused Lorraine to become violently ill when brought in. If the Warrens were on the case, then they brought something back sitting on that shelf. Mr. Spera blesses everyone who visits the museum before entry, just in case there's any residual evil hanging around in the air you might be bringing in. A priest comes by too to bless all the items, keep them safe. The museum is currently closed to visitors, but Spera is working hard to have this piece of paranormal legacy reopened once again. Number 1. Zack Bagans' Haunted Museum. Now, if you're looking for the cream of the crop, if you're looking for the peak of the haunted museum circuit, well, then no one has worked harder for that distinction than Zak Bagans, the esteemed paranormal investigator and ghost adventure star. Zak's collection started when he was a young boy, when he would scour garage sales with his mom in hopes of finding strange occult objects. I wonder how often he was finding occult objects at garage sales. Since then, a lifelong obsession would eventually turn into one of the most impressive hoards of spooky finds under the sun. The museum is in Las Vegas, built on a property in 1938 that has been said to be home to dark spirits who pass there, and their energy remains behind. Before becoming a museum, it's rumored that it used to be home to secret orders that would perform dark rituals. Among some of Zak's more treasured haunted items are the Dybbuk box, a wine rack said to be home to the world's most malevolent poltergeist, a possessed rocking chair from the famous Glatzel case, inspiring The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and tons of relics from the world's most sinister criminals like Ed Gein or Ted Bundy. Now, it goes without saying that a building replete with haunted items is a melting pot for spirits and haunting sightings. The tour warns you and asks you to sign a waiver before entering that you're knowingly putting yourself at risk of endangerment from unknown forces. Now, staff at the museum have reported everything from seeing strange lights, shadows, hearing peculiar noises, feeling unwell around certain objects, all the way to real extremes like seeing mysterious figures and cloaked, robed people at night. If you're feeling up for it and you want to feel like a paranormal investigator yourself, the museum also offers solo tours at night with nothing but a flashlight to guide you. Just be aware of what you're going up against.
Coming at number 5, we've got the Satanic idol. Now, Satan is usually quite a controversial figure. In the past, any mention of the name would have been associated with something terrible, especially as satanic panic swept the nation. Why won't anyone think of the children, right? We love to assign weird moral values to stuff to ensure our political weight can be thrown around, but I'm getting off topic. These days, the jury is out on Satan. Many folks love the guy and worship him as ardently as anyone else would worship their deities. Some say he's a more forgiving figure than plenty of other gods and demigods. However, this idol doesn't seem to be associated with that end of the satanic spectrum. This one comes from the bowels of hell and brings with it misfortune and terror, or so they say. Let's take a look at this interesting oddity. With a misshapen horned head, piercing blue eyes, and a strange, unnaturally slim body, this doesn't necessarily look like the powerful demon most folks would assume is Satan. Artists can take liberties with the things they create, so don't write it off simply based on its looks. Apparently, a young hunter had been scavenging through the woods in Connecticut when he stumbled upon this cursed idol. He didn't really know what to do with it, but he took it along just as well. Soon after coming into possession of this horned artifact, he ran into an old man in dark robes, one telling tales of doom and horror. This, of course, spooked the hunter, who discussed this interaction with his friends. Eventually, after some sleepless nights and anxiety, he was put in contact with the Warrens, who came by to evaluate the idol. They deemed it haunted indeed and took it off the poor guy's hands. I'm sure he was very glad to be free of it. Ed and Lorraine strapped the devil thing in and brought it back to their museum, where it still remains. So if you ever get a hankering for some devil worship, or really want to look into some Gollum-esque blue eyes, you know where to go. Just be careful. That cloaked man in the woods is said to have been a worshipper of Satan, using the idol in dark and terrible rituals. I'm sure it's safe in the museum, but who knows? Coming in number 4, we've got the toy monkey. What is it about old school toys that makes them so creepy? Like, at some point in history, every single toy maker decided it was time to stop making them look that way and move on to much cuter, cuddlier, cooler, and overall less frightening things. Maybe tastes changed, or folks just collectively woke up to the fact that they were letting their kids play with nightmare objects, but regardless of the reason, I'm glad we've left these designs in the past. Dredging up these figures makes for some good spooky times though, right? Take this toy monkey for example. Would you buy your kids something like this these days? I'd wager no, and for good reason. Not only is it unsettling to look at, plenty of similar monkeys have been featured in the spookiest of scenes across Hollywood, but there's a lot of dark energy imbued in this particular monkey. The one at the Warrens Museum is said to carry a terrible curse. Hell, it was even featured in Annabelle Comes Home. So what does a little monkey have to do to earn such a reputation? Well, this one seems to stalk people, torment them, and then kill them. Oh no. Imagine this thing suddenly appearing in your life one day, then as time went on, it started popping up in places you know you didn't leave it. Little monkey cymbals might be heard crashing in the middle of the night, and disembodied shuffling can keep you from sleeping. All that's creepy, but it's still just a toy, right? Hold up. Did its eyes just glow? That is some monkey business I want no part of. But hey, at least this one in particular is locked away and not to be recirculated into the general population of antique monkey toys. Well, for now, anyway.
Coming in at number 3, we've got the Museum of Torture Instruments. Now, we just wrapped up talking about well-preserved bodies, now let's take a look at some mangled and destroyed ones. I know for sure that if I got tortured to death, I'd be coming back to make the life of whoever did it a living hell. Put me in an Iron Maiden, guess what's playing at 4 AM, full blast every night. Throw me in a rack, you'll be hearing my screams until you go deaf. Burn me alive, good luck ever escaping the smell of incinerated flesh. I've got to imagine it would be the same for all sorts of folks. Dying in a terrible fashion does not make for a peaceful passing. So of course a museum full of the most malicious objects to ever grace the planet would be home to a few specters. Finding a home in Prague, the Museum of Torture Instruments has over 60 torture devices on display for the whole family to enjoy. From the flesh-singeing gridiron to some stranger options like the Spanish tickle torture, you can treat your eyes to humanity's darkest hits. And it's not just the magnificent machines themselves, there are also wax figures of poor saps about to lose their lives to make it all the more real. Is that crying I hear? Coming in at number 2, we've got the Museum of Death. Back in 1995, J.D. Healy and Catherine Schultz would write letters to serial killers. Often they would even get a note or two in response, maybe even some artwork. Then they would put all these deadly dastards' work on display. Eventually these exhibitions became so popular that it was decided that they would populate a whole museum, and so it went. In San Diego's purported oldest mortuary, the Museum of Death was opened. Over time, the museum has collected all sorts of different trinkets and oddities related to death and the people that cause it. Healy and Schultz even tried to acquire stuff from the Heaven's Gate cult suicides. The publicity resulted in them being evicted from their mortuary museum and moving to Los Angeles. The halls are full of fascinating and freaky things, ranging from baby coffins to the previously collected serial killer artwork to the purported guillotined head of a notorious French serial killer. Every year they host a Black Dahlia lookalike contest with categories for both pre and post-mortem. It's hard to imagine a place so obsessed with death not having a ghost or two to call their own, especially back when it was hosted in a mortuary. So if you ever find yourself looking at Zak Kevorkian's drip suicide machine and see something appear in the periphery, maybe back away slowly and try not to acknowledge it. And lastly, at number 1, we've got John Zaffis' Museum of the Paranormal. John Zaffis is a second-generation paranormal researcher with over 40 years of experience. He's been all over the world looking for ghosts and demons and other unnatural phenomena. A prolific public presence, he's starred in reality TV shows, made appearances in documentaries, and has been an expert guest on many a radio program. All of this knowledge about the world beyond our own has been put to good use in his very own museum. Many of the items he has collected over the years are held here. While some are simply curios from interesting places, Zaffis claims that a lot of the items held here are indeed haunted. He'll cleanse the items before putting them on display, although some are particularly active and must be kept in special cases. And if you've heard of Annabelle, you know exactly what that means. The museum showcases a sword used in satanic rituals, a military jacket that supposedly gave a girl vivid dreams of the battlefield, and even the Virgin Mary statue that the haunting in Connecticut was based on. It's kind of like Ed and Lorraine Warren's museum, but with a little less Hollywood scrutiny behind it. There's no billion-dollar franchise backing Zaffis, just a few movies here and there.
Number 5, the John Zaffis Museum. For someone like John Zaffis, opening a haunted museum was always in the cards. It was practically destiny. Few people can claim to come from a legacy of haunted museums, but Zaffis can, since he's the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, America's most famous and oftentimes controversial demonologists. Growing up with a large fondness for his aunt and uncle's work, Zaffis developed a love of the paranormal from an early age and saw fit to try and carry on his relatives' work after their passing, opening his own collection of haunted relics the same way that the Warrens did. And what a collection of weird relics Zaffis has picked up. I'll shout out a couple of the cooler ones. The highlight for me has got to be this sword that was used to conjure black magic, and the sword is in like all of the promotional imagery, so it's gotta be pretty good. Check out this photo of Zaffis where he looks like a dark wizard who's also a fantasy author. Among the blade are things like a cast iron skull that was used in occult rituals, plenty of haunted dolls and idols, an ornate elk skull thought to be used in something evil, and loads more. Zaffis does point out on the website, in the frequently asked questions section, not to worry too much about being exposed to this stuff, as everything that's brought into the collection is blessed before taking residence. Although they do make a small warning on the website that there is a teeny tiny small chance that any residual evil might attach to you in the museum. So, I don't know, make sure to wash your hands with hand sanitizer or holy water on the way out. I can't not include this, by the way, but the website also states that if Zaffis believes personally that any of the items in the museum have become too evil or too haunted to remain safe for public display, he throws it into an unspecified body of water. So if you're looking to start a collection of slightly used haunted relics on the cheap, I'd just check out the surrounding bodies of water to the museum. Now unfortunately, John Zaffis' museum is currently closed. Hey, this list was about ones that had to be abandoned, right? Can't come as too much of a surprise. But for those who are hoping to get a good up-close personal look at these cursed relics, Zaffis says he's been searching for a new location for the collection. Hopefully somewhere with some good ventilation, you know, really let all that evil air flow. And hey, if you're looking for more videos about haunted museums, haunted objects, haunted dolls, haunted everything really, we've got all more of that in spades. So stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary, keep the screams coming all night long. Let's keep going. Number 4, the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. Pack up the whole family and make sure to stop by at the gift shop for the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. Don't worry, there's something for everybody here to enjoy. Make sure you take home the miniature guillotine. One quick look at their website is particularly illuminating. Our main product is emotion, boldly proclaimed as their slogan. Yeah, well, agonizing pain is definitely an emotion, so I can't disagree there. The Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments really is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a massive collection of real historical relics and replicas serving to highlight some of the most disgustingly creative works of engineering ever invented. The kind of stuff that would make Jigsaw and his funny little puppet blush with anticipation. The museum's goal is to remind us just how truly unimaginably cruel human beings are are capable of being to each other, and the lengths to which we will go to attain such horrid ambitions. The phrase, "those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it," comes up a whole lot on the museum's frequently asked questions page on the website, which is good. So come, learn a bit from such classics like the rack or the brazen bull, so you don't accidentally end up repeating those. I don't think I can even possibly describe what either of those horrifying things do without getting this channel permanently flagged. So if you're curious, maybe take the worst Google trip of your life, or go up and visit the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. They've got locations all over the states for your pleasure, and there's even one in Europe, but I'm pretty sure that's a different one. The one I'm talking about right now is the American one. The one in Chicago even offers a ghost hunting tour, as some guests believe there are residual spirits tied to some of the more grisly equipment kept in the dungeons. Guests are invited to spend the night on their own accord or with the safety of a tour guide to try and uncover any of the spirits that are said to be still living there, including an old executioner named Thomas who loves his work so much he just never left. Sheesh. Nearly 1,000 years and he still doesn't take a day off. Some people just love to have their nose to the grindstone, or to forcefully shove someone else's face into the grindstone. To each their own.
In at 5, Frederick Remington Museum. Located in Ogdensburg, New York, this museum was built in 1810 by David Parrish, before eventually being occupied by American painter Frederick Remington, who would later die in 1909, in the house. His home would later go on to house his most notable artworks, opening its doors in 1923, remaining open to this day. Now, with a house that's seen a lot of death, it's not crazy to believe that it is housing many a spirit that is yet to pass on. Now, according to museum director Laura Foster, the most prominent entity residing in the museum is that of Madame Amerigo Vespucci, a woman from the 19th century who was reputed to, I quote, to be won in a game of cards, aka killed. Now, in March of 2015, a psychic medium, Frida Gladel, conducted a walkthrough of the museum. She noted that although there was no full-time spirits lingering within the bricks, she did in fact encounter a lot of residual energy within its walls, including that of a woman believed to be Vespucci, who informed the investigators that it was not cards that killed her, but instead a nasty owner of the neighbouring museum, according to the transcriptions of the walkthrough. Now, Laura Foster has been quoted in saying that a lot of these reports have been embellished, and perhaps the ghostly talks of the museum are getting the better of it, but still, supernatural reports keep coming in. In at 4, Merchant's House Museum. Now a museum, the Merchant's House was originally populated by the Treadwell family from 1835 to 1933, and who are rumoured to be haunting the old museum. Many visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures that match up the images of the Treadwell family. Gertrude, the youngest daughter, is most prominently seen roaming the halls. She passed away in 1933. Every year, paranormal investigators flock to the museum, including Dan Sturges, who documents the ghostly activity through recordings and pictures. Though no firm evidence has come out of the investigations, that does not stop the reports from rolling in. Communications manager at the museum, Emily Wright, has stated, "The museum would never come out and definitively say, yes, we're haunted. Yet visitors have matched reported sightings with images of the family." Very creepy. Coming in at number 3, we have the Demon House Staircase. The original staircase from the Gary Demon House is said to be so haunted that construction crews walked off the job and refused to come back after its installation. Set back in a dimly lit corner, the wooden staircase rests on a layer of dirt extracted from the location famous for demonic activity. The Demon House was located in Gary, Indiana, and was unfortunately home to the Ammons family. It was said to be a portal to hell, and the demons seemed to emanate from beneath the stairs. The same stairs displayed at Zak's Museum. There were reports of demonic possessions, a child levitating, and many other disturbing events. The family's matriarch, LaToya Ammons, had to undergo multiple exorcisms as a result. It was so bad that even the local police department and social services were convinced of its purported hauntedness. There are things in this world that we will never fully understand, like why Zak decided to buy the home plagued by demonic entities. He did shoot his documentary Demon House there, where he investigated the haunting. It must have left an impact on him because the house has since been demolished and the stairs continue to haunt Zak's museum. Coming in at number 2, we have the Devil's Rocking Chair. This sinister chair is linked to a very famous investigation done by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and its story serves as the plot for The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It. Zak actually purchased this chair for $67,000 just hours before the death of Lorraine Warren. Ooh, creepy. The Devil's Rocking Chair was the site of the infamous exorcism of David Glatzel, who was allegedly possessed by a demon. The 11-year-old at the time was being tormented by a man-like demon who resembled a beast with sharp jagged teeth, horns, and hoofs. As the haunting progressed, the chair was said to be under the demon's power, and David would often see the beast sitting in it. Ed and Lorraine performed numerous exorcisms on David in that very chair. The final exorcism was a success, and the demon was expelled from David right into his sister's boyfriend, who killed his landlord shortly after. He pled not guilty due to demonic possession, a first in American history, citing that the devil made me do it. It didn't work, by the way. In 2019, the Devil's Rocking Chairs exhibit actually had to be shut down because it was doing its job a little too well. 6 different people shared the same disturbing experience with the chair. They all had bouts of uncontrollable crying, and one even collapsed above it. The museum having adverse effects on visitors isn't anything new, with ambulances having to be called in the past, but this was the first time in the museum's history that an exhibit had to be shut down. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Dybbuk box. In the number 1 spot is known as the most haunted object in the world, the notorious Dybbuk box. According to Jewish mythology, a Dybbuk is a malevolent spirit that's said to haunt and possess the living, and the Dybbuk box is home to the evil entity. This wine cabinet is so haunted that it actually served as inspiration for the horror film The Possession. The Dybbuk box first became a sensation when it was listed on eBay, along with an extensive ghost story attached to it. After some owner hopping, it came into Zak's possession. Shortly after the Dybbuk box arrived in the museum, holes allegedly began to appear around the haunted cabinet. A downtown Las Vegas marketing executive also apparently witnessed a black-cloaked apparition pass through the exhibit's door while doing a private tour with Zak. This haunted relic is no joke. Even Post Malone was apparently cursed by the Dybbuk when he visited the museum with Zak himself. After touching Zak's shoulder, who was resting his hand on the box, Post Malone had a streak of terrible luck. In less than a month, his private jet was forced to make an emergency landing when 2 tires blew out. His house was broken into by armed robbers, and then he got into a car crash.
Number 5. The Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult. Owned by a couple, Dana and Greg Newkirk, who realized one day that they had a passion for the paranormal and a collection worth boasting about, they opened a museum with the intention of getting people to experience the paranormal as close as they could. The thinking being that we don't usually get to experience it up close, this museum provides a one-of-a-kind horror experience. Some of the gems of the collection include a piece of the real-life Amityville horror house, the infamous haunting, or how about the Catskills crone, a terrifying hand-carved idol of a human with nails jammed into the eyes, allegedly tied to a supernatural entity called the crone. The Restless painting, a cursed painting notorious for flinging itself across rooms, or if that's all not enough for you, perhaps the terrifying begging bowl, an ancient Tibetan offering made out of a human skull, designed for rituals where the offerer would feed the skull wine, bread, and blood in exchange to temper the raging spirits of demons for good fortune. Now, there's no question the Traveling Museum is one of the most unique collections on the planet, and lucky for you, it's always moving. But if you're looking for good scares, you don't need to travel anywhere, because you already know the best scares are coming to you twice a day, every day at Top 5 Scary. Stay subscribed and stay scared. Number 4. Zaffis Museum of the Paranormal. Now, for most of us, we probably wouldn't think of mixing cursed items in with the decor. I wouldn't want to bring that dark energy home with me. I get enough bad vibes as it is. Well, for John Zaffis, he welcomes it with open arms. What kind of person would want to do that? Well, if I told you that Zaffis was the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, would it make a bit more sense? Feeling inspired by his aunt and uncle, Zaffis too became a collector of the paranormal and an investigator of the unknown. Must run in the family. He worked alongside his aunt and uncle on several of their cases where he was tutored by them in the ways of the paranormal, leading him to become a respected hunter in his own right. Following in their footsteps, he opened his own museum of his own demonic relics. His collection includes souvenirs from the cases he's worked on in the past, much like his relatives. Some highlights of the collection include a black cast iron human skull that was discovered inside an unnamed political family's house, a black idol that was used for satanic rituals, a sword that was apparently used to conjure black magic, and a whole lot more. Now don't worry, everything Zaffis taken in is safe, it's been cleansed, and he's very careful with his vetting process. Apparently anything too cursed for him to feel safe bringing into the museum, he throws into a body of water. So just be careful swimming around the museum, I suppose. Now the museum is currently closed, but Zaffis is searching for a new location to open up again soon. Hopefully somewhere with some nice thick walls. Keep all that evil energy in check.
Number 3 on this list is the Thirsk Museum. Located in Yorkshire Museum, this tiny little quaint museum is the last place you would expect to see something haunted. Enter in the Busby stoop chair. Museum Crush says, Yorkshire drunk, criminal, and coin counterfeiter Thomas Busby murdered his father-in-law and fellow counterfeiter Daniel Aughty in 1702. Busby was arrested at the local inn and sentenced to death by hanging. According to legend, he laid a curse on his favorite chair at the inn, saying death would come soon to anyone who dared sit in his seat. After his execution, his remains were hung in a gibbet from a stoop at Sand Hutton Crossroads, now the location of the Busby Stoop Inn. The inn and surrounding area were said to be haunted by Busby's ghost, but one chair there in particular had developed a rather sinister reputation following a string of tragic accidents. Second World War airmen who sat in the chair were said to never return from their missions, and the chair also linked to several road accidents and fatal illnesses. In 1978, the inn's landlord removed the chair to Thirsk Museum just a few miles down the road. The chair is now suspended high above the ground at the museum to ensure that no unassuming soul can ever fall foul of its curse again. It's been hung there, unmoved, for 40 years. I've looked into this chair further, and for a while there, it really was that if you sat in this thing, you were going to die. It wasn't going to happen in a year from now or something like that either. Like, we're talking about pretty imminent death here. Number 2 on this list is the Natural History Museum. The Natural History Museum is one of the most complete museums in the world, and being so complete, it obviously has to include a cursed item. Museum Crush says this apparently cursed gem was owned by 19th century polymath Edward Heron Allen. So powerful was its curse that he eventually decided to have it stored away in a bank vault inside 7 locked boxes with a note of warning to anyone who dare handle it. Heron Allen also left strict instruction not to remove the amethyst until 33 years after his death. The curious story surrounding the stone says that it was stolen from the temple of the god Indra during the Indian Mutiny by Colonel W. Ferris, an officer of the Bengal Cavalry. After Ferris's health deteriorated and he died, the cursed amethyst was passed on to his son, who suffered a similar bout of bad luck and eventually gave it to Heron Allen. After facing a string of health and financial misfortunes, Heron Allen made several attempts to get rid of the stone, but they all proved unsuccessful each time it returned to him. Less than a year after his death, Heron Allen's daughter donated the amethyst to the Natural History Museum, where it is on display in the vault. And finally, number 1 on this list is Zack Bagans' Haunted Museum. The number 1 voted haunted place in America has got to make this list, considering it's full of cursed objects. There isn't just one object here that's cursed, there are tons. In fact, we would need our own separate video dedicated solely to this place to even begin to break down all the scary stuff that's in this museum. Just listen to this small excerpt from the website. Among the hundreds of terrifying possessions, museum goers can even peek inside the VW death van in which Dr. Jack Kevorkian ended the suffering of terminally ill patients, as well as get a close-up look at the propofol chair from Michael Jackson's death room. Perhaps most unsettling is the original staircase from the Indiana Demon House, notorious for its powerful paranormal activity before being demolished in 2014. The wooden banister and creaky steps from the house now stand in a dimly lit corner, resting on a blanket of dirt from the location. Following its installation, a group of construction workers walked off the job and refused to come back. These are just a couple of the so-called attractions that this place has to offer. If you go to this museum, then there is a very good chance you will end up walking out with a curse attached to you. That much paranormal energy all lumped into one place, it just spells out something haunted. Be very careful if you ever intend to go here.
Coming in at number 5 is the Pitt Rivers Museum. This archaeological and anthropological collection is an offshoot of Oxford University in England. It's known for storing and displaying all sorts of items from the collection of General Pitt Rivers, including an extensive amount of historically significant photographs and sound recordings. That's not what we're discussing here though, no. If we're discussing things that are creepy and potentially haunted, look no further than the Sansas display. There's a room at Pitt Rivers dedicated to the shrunken heads recovered from the upper Amazon region between Peru and Ecuador. Lots of folks think that shrunken heads are just pulpy tropes used to to mysticize people from the Amazon for use in movies and adventure novels, but they were indeed a real practice made by the Shuar and Achuar people. In order to capture the power of a person's soul, they would peel the skin and hair off a skull, soak it in hot water, and then have hot sand poured inside. As the demand for shrunken heads increased in Europe, more sloth and monkey heads were used. I guess there weren't enough human heads to keep up with colonial demand. The museum displays contain one human head from General Pitt Rivers, and nobody knows how he came into possession of it. Probably some sketchy business. Since then, a few more shrunken heads have been donated to the museum, and they're kept in the treatment of dead enemies case along with other human heads. So if you've ever wanted to encounter a human soul stored in a shrunken head, or maybe just some skulls separate from the rest of their body, head on down to Pitt Rivers. But maybe don't look him in the eyes though. Coming in at number 4, we've got Catacomb dei Capuchini. And if just the heads aren't enough for you, consider heading down to Italy to see a massive collection of mummified bodies. Back in the 16th century, the Capuchin monastery ran out of space in its original cemetery, leading the monks to excavate crypts beneath. After mummifying a few friars, it became somewhat of a status symbol to be entombed in the catacombs, with many folks asking to be preserved in fancy clothes. In fact, for a long time, the catacombs were maintained through donations from relatives of the dead. Bodies would be displayed prominently as long as money was flowing, but if donations stopped, they would be moved to less easily viewed areas. Eventually, thousands of mummified bodies were put on display, organized by signifiers like class, gender, and profession. Nowadays, the catacombs are open to the general public, so anyone with an interest in preserved people can head out and see. Photography is strictly prohibited, and grills have been put up to prevent people from tampering from the deceased. But if folks were concerned enough to have their bodies dressed up and displayed, I would say they're more likely to stick around to make sure that it happened, right? In a tomb full of thousands of preserved bodies, there's gotta be a few ghosts circulating to make sure everything's the way they'd like it to be.
Coming in number 3, we've got the Shadow Doll. Now, we've all got a particular cursed doll in mind when it comes to the Warrens, and now she's the star of a major motion picture franchise, so it seems that she's always gonna come in first. But there is another doll at the museum that should elicit at least the same amount of fear. That's right, I'm talking about the Shadow Doll. This thing is downright butt ugly. Like, Annabelle as an OG Raggedy Annie is kinda creepy, and they had to make sure they punched up the creepiness with some porcelain features and unnerving eyes for the movie. But if they made a movie featuring the Shadow Doll as is, I think they might actually have to make it less creepy. For real. I don't know if big movie theater chains would allow something like this on their screens. Feels like something out of a snuff film, maybe a low-budget exploitation flick. Nobody's looking at this and saying, oh yeah, I want to watch a whole movie based on this thing. Worse yet, the Shadow Doll seems to carry a much more terrible curse than most. Plenty of cursed dolls require you to be in the same room as them in order for the worst of the effects to hit you, but the Shadow Doll just needs you to view a picture of it to generate risk. Just looking at it means there's a chance it'll visit you in your dreams and kill you there, Freddy Krueger style. And based on looks, I don't think it would make it fun like Freddy does. It would just be brutal and upsetting. Goodness gracious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Pearls of Death. These are known for their outrageously dangerous powers. They might just look like a nice set of pearls waiting to be adorned by the fanciest of folk, but be warned, the glamour is not worth the price. And I'm not talking about how much you pay for them. No, it is not money that these pearls want, it is your life. Owners of this particular string of aquatic orbs have complained time and time again of the necklace constricting around their throat and choking them. According to the first woman to adorn herself with this luxurious item, she felt as if she was being strangled as soon as she put them on. She attempted to take them off, but was unsuccessful. Panicked, she rushed out to request help, and it took multiple people yanking on the string to finally set her free. Since then, people have been very reluctant to wear these pearls. Some believe that a Satanist or black magic worshipper cursed the necklace before it was given to the unfortunate woman, kind of like the opposite of a holy person blessing an object. How fun. I wonder if we got a priest in there, whether they could cancel out the curse. I suppose not too many people are willing to test whether or not the pearls are still strangling. And finally, at number 1, we've got Annabelle, the Warren Museum tenant who needs no introduction, the mistress of the glass case, the shadow clawer of college boyfriends, the mega million movie star herself, Annabelle. What a classic cursed doll. Honestly, I'm sure the museum could liquidate most of their other objects and still have a similar crowd come by if they just kept Annabelle. Legendary. She looks a little different in real life than in the movies, although I'm sure this is true of any movie star. We've already discussed her Raggedy Annie appearance, especially compared to the more porcelain figure in the flicks. However, this doll makes up for a lack of spooky looks with a plethora of terrifying tales. After being gifted to a nursing student, Annabelle started acting strange. She'd move around the house on her own and leave little notes to the girls living there. Eventually, she would attack and strangle the boyfriend of one of the students, leaving them desperate for help. The Warrens soon arrived and whisked the doll away. However, they seemed to know just how wretched and terrible she could be, and as such, they locked Annabelle away in a holy box. This seems to keep her at bay, but who knows? Someday she could break free once again. I'm sure there are plenty more extra cursed and haunted objects held at the Warrens Occult Museum, but today we've only got time for 5. It's absolutely fascinating to hear the tales of these things.
Number 3, the Panang War Museum. I think it's a very good sign that your museum is a friendly, welcoming place. If you Google it and the first results are an article called The Horrors on Ghost Hill, and a listing for an IMDb episode for a series called I Wouldn't Go There, featuring your museum. It's either really hurting or really helping the tourism there. Well, if those warning signs weren't enough to deter you, enter the Panang War Museum, my little ghouls and goblins. It's been described as one of the most haunted spots in Asia, flat out. The Panang Museum is built atop the grave of an old army fort built by the British in the 1930s, but was taken control by the Japanese in the late 30s in World War II, and used to house prisoners for as long as the prisoners lived, which was usually not very long, if the site of the guillotine is anything to go by. After the end of the Second World War, the place had become totally abandoned, until it was retrofitted to become a museum, and serve as a reminder of the grim reality of war and its costs. The whole place kind of has this eerie, abandoned ghost town vibe as you walk through tunnels and old bunkers, serving to try and replicate what it would be like to actually work and spend time in a place like this while it was functioning. Given the very grim nature of the content and the site itself, which was home to so much bloodshed, death, hatred, and all the worst parts of our souls, it's no surprise that the museum has an infamous reputation as a spot for paranormal activity. Guests have reported seeing strange sightings, unusual shadows, and feeling chills as they walk through the bunkers. But all of this begs the question, would ghosts even be scarier than the actual truth of this place? Now, I've never been, but from what I was looking at and gathering for this, it seems to me like the true horror of the Panang Museum is that it's a reflection of some of the worst parts of the human experience. A reminder of what happens during wartime and what people do to one another. This place doesn't need stories of spirits. It's haunted enough as is by the memories that will forever be tied to it. Number 2, the Mutter Museum. Mutter is the German word for mother. That's your fact for today, so you can tell your Mutter that you learned something from this video. Well, this isn't a museum for moms or about moms, although they're more than welcome to come. The Mutter Museum in Philadelphia isn't quite like the other museums on this list. It's not particularly known for being paranormal or haunted, but rather it's a collection of medical oddities and curios all arranged behind cabinets in a very clean, professional manner. It's not known for vengeful spirits or anything walking the halls, but rather just home to an incredible amount of very creepy things in jars. Every picture of the place looks like something out of a mad scientist's lab, a background of a B horror movie set, that one weird place from that one Harry Potter movie, maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Amputated limbs float in jars next to organs, fetuses from all sorts of animals you can imagine, and more bones than you could possibly shake a femur at. They got skulls of all kinds. They got skulls for days. They got an entire wall dedicated solely to the skulls of criminals, and all sorts of broken skulls in disarray, eaten by tumors or other lovely diseases. If you're looking for skulls, they have got skulls. They've got a collection of famous remnants, Albert Einstein's brain, if you want to see if some of that rubs off on you, Grover Cleveland's famous tumor. Well, we all love Grover Cleveland's tumor. Pack the whole car up. Let's go see that. You know, fun stuff. Now, guests who visit the Mutter Museum do pretty frequently complain of feeling dizzy and uneasy while wandering through the collection, but whether or not that's because of some poltergeist or spiritual influence, or because you're wandering through a 6,000 square foot room looking at hundreds of brains, bones, and disembodied organs in jars, is up for some debate. I know just reading about this thing already makes me feel kind of squeamish, makes my stomach feel all churny. I wonder if they have a little cafe in this one, like most museums have. You think anybody's eating there? And number 1, the Museum of Death. The Museum of Death. Well, I wonder what sort of topics they enjoy covering at the Museum of Death. I bet they have an absolutely illuminating look at pre-Raphaelite art of the late 19th to early 20th centuries. They don't? What? No, at the Museum of Death, opened in Hollywood in 1995, which was opened by a married couple with the intention to make people happy to be alive. Whew. How do they accomplish this? Do they show you pictures of whiskers on kittens and raindrops on roses? No, of course not. It's a collection of everything to do with death. Bones, skulls, coffins, ancient mortician's tools, executioner's equipment, and a whole lot more. Amusingly, the owners have said their goal is not to scare anyone with this museum. That's not what their museum is about. Now sure, they play videos of autopsies and they have footage and imagery from incredibly grisly and stomach-churning real-life true crime cases like artifacts from Charles Manson's family or some of of Jeffrey Dahmer's personal effects, but they don't want to scare you. The museum is there to show death in its brutal, unedited honesty. The owners themselves describe it as a commemoration of life. And I gotta be honest, I'm making it sound worse than it is, but it definitely does sound interesting. And the grimmest parts of me are definitely more than a little curious to check it out in that morbid sort of way, because it sounds cool. Probably a great date spot to take a goth girl, I bet. The museum does kind of embrace its sort of twisted reputation. It really runs with it. It hosts Black Dahlia costume contests where guests are judged on who's got the best post-mortem Black Dahlia costume, which is something. It's not thought to be as haunted as some of the other places on this list, but it does really bring out some visceral reactions in people. Apparently, it's not too uncommon for guests to demand to leave early or to outright faint while walking through the museum. The owners refer to these cases as falling down ovations, which is a very funny turn of a phrase. Now, sadly, if you're listening to all of this and you're already pre-buying tickets for your next trip to LA, sadly, the museum is currently closed down. They are reopening though. They've also got a museum in New Orleans, since their collection of macabre knickknacks is so large it couldn't be contained to just one spot. When it reopens, I recommend you get out as soon as you can. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.